Introduce our program for this morning.
We'd like to keep you on your toes, Chris,
Oh yeah,
between Laurel and about a little over 2 years ago, Port Angeles, Clallam County got a new air ambulance or helicopter paramedic service that came to service us with their base out at Fairchild. And today we have two representatives of the Life Flight Network. We're joined today by Amber Haynes Miller. She is the outreach coordinator and performs these activities throughout Idaho, Washington, and Montana. As the outreach coordinator for Life Flight Network, Amber facilitates community and customer engagement for the organization. She began the job in 2014 and is still learning a great deal about healthcare every day. Her background spans marketing and PR in a multitude of settings and industries. The second person representing the company is Andrew Clemens, and by taking a quick look at his bio, I think he's native to Port Angeles and possibly his family members here. So Andrew Clemens is going to be taking over as the new customer service manager for the Life Flight Network, replacing Casey Shine. He was raised on the Olympic Peninsula in Port Angeles, where he went to school. He returned to Port Angeles in 2011 after leaving the area following high school. Many people return because it's such a wonderful place and it's where his family resides. His work and education experience includes a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Arts in Biology. He has over a decade of experience in critical care and emergency nursing, with most recent hospital experience at Olympic Medical Center. He's been working for Life Flight Network for 2 years. It's been an amazing be part of the operation in Port Angeles and really bringing it to our Clallam County. He's grown up here and feels and knows and understands the need for air medical services on the Olympic Peninsula for a long time. Air Flight Network has a strong group of clinicians and pilots that have a passion for their jobs. Life Flight Network has done a phenomenal job in introducing themselves to our community in a rapid and timely manner, while still providing for critical care needs. And just in support of Andrew and Amber and what they've brought, my son is a helicopter paramedic in Northern California. So this topic, these people are near and dear to my heart. Please welcome Amber and Andrew to our meeting this morning.
welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah,
So I'll go ahead and get started. Let's see here. So we're going to share screens. I have a PowerPoint that I'll utilize in the background while I do this. And so I'm going to go ahead and take myself off. I don't like to see myself in the screen anyway, so I really like the PowerPoint. Okay. And where is
We've been hanging around with Laurel too long.
Oh, does Laurel hide out as well?
Yeah, to the benefit of all.
Let's see here. Here we go.
Yeah, Laurel's our resident hermit.
I'm starting to feel like a hermit. Okay, let's see here. Every time I do this, it looks just a little bit different, it seems like. Okay, and I'll move you guys down in the corner there. There we go. So thank you so much for that introduction, Kathy. Yes, so mine was pretty brief, but I've been with Life Flight for about 7 years, and my background is in international public relations. And like Andrew, who returned to that area, I returned to my hometown as well, in north central Idaho. It's a very small town, and not a lot happens here, but we are a busy flight community. A lot of Life Flight aircraft come and go in and out of Orofino, Idaho. And typically the flights go up to Spokane, Washington, but sometimes they come over to your neck of the woods too. So one of my 5 dogs is scratching at the door. That's so nice. So a little bit of history about Life Flight. We began in 1978, and we began much like other flight programs did, where there's a singular helicopter based out of a hospital that would go out, retrieve a patient, and return that patient to the hospital then. And we are one in the same, beginning that way out of Emmanuel Hospital in the Portland metro area. And we were the first hospital-based air ambulance west of the Mississippi. We're now the largest nonprofit air ambulance program in the nation. And our ownership, I mentioned Legacy Emmanuel. They are still one of our owners, our first. And a few years after that, we added on Oregon Health and Science University, and that's when we became more of a standalone program, which is how most programs operate modern day. From there, Providence Health and Services came on as an owner, and in 2009, our most recent owner, St. Alphonsus, came on board. They had that model of the helicopter coming out of the hospital in Boise, Idaho, and they wanted to delineate their program and have it stand alone from their hospital operations. And the reason that hospitals went that direction is simply because there's many reasons, but to try to really simplify it is because picture, if you will, a flight needs to go out, so they grab a nurse out of the ED and some meds off the shelf and different things, blankets, whatever is necessary, and they send out the helicopter. Well, you're not able to really account for your cost, your operations, your outcome, your production, and really your successes and failures. So as time went on, hospitals began to change to this platform, and as did St. Alphonsus. And they went into a vetting process and selected Life Flight Network as the owner of their program. And so they joined us, and that's when we opened up a second region in Life Flight Network. And in 2016, we integrated Northwest MedStar into our program. They were formerly the flight program out of, well, decades ago, it was Sacred Heart Medical Center in Spokane and Deaconess Medical Center. And the two had eventually merged and become Northwest MedStar under the Providence ownership. And we integrated them into our program. So we grew by a little bubble burst there, and it's been pretty busy and active, at least since I came on board 7 years ago. Our newest base came online in early December or late November, and that's in Walla Walla, Washington. Okay, so here is just a picture of our dispatch center. It's really an anticlimactic picture. I wish we had a better one. When I first walked in there, I would liken it to the Starship Enterprise. It's pretty spectacular, and the whole wall to the left also has the same bank of screens. They have hosted, oh yes, go ahead.
I don't believe your PowerPoint is going with the deck here. We're still on the first one.
Oh, hold on.
There we go.
Huh. Well, you know what's interesting is I had an update pop up right then, and maybe it delayed it. Okay, so they've had some guests come in over the years, teams who are seeking to set up communication centers, and they've come and visited ours. Apparently, I don't know a lot about communication centers, but apparently ours is state of the art, and it's pretty amazing. It's sort of the brain of what we do. Just about any question where you don't know where it should go, as far as where do I get this answer from, we can generally find it at the communication center. It's actually located on the 5th floor of St. Alphonsus Medical Center in Boise. It was such an outstanding comm center that rather than go with our existing comm center at the time in Portland, where our whole complete headquarters is, we decided to go with that comm center. So we're kind of split between Portland and Boise in that sense. Okay, so our service area. This is just a map giving you a very quick overview of where all of our bases are. It helps you to see where you are, where you might go, where we are. You'll notice there's some different colored pins in there. That just kind of denotes whether there's also a fixed wing at that base and possibly a ground unit. Our business is not in ground transport, but we utilize ground units as an assistant or a support to our flight operations, such as if we are functioning with a fixed wing and we need to move the patient from the hospital to that fixed wing, that has to go via the airport, and therefore there's a ground transport that takes place. If we do not have a ground unit in that area, then we work with local EMS to do that interfacility, that transaction of the patient between the hospital and the airport to get them to that fixed wing. We have contracts with many ground programs for maybe some different reasons. Like for an example, you'll see up in northern Idaho there's a pin on Sandpoint. They are forever in fog, it seems, in certain times of the year. So what we will often do is put our medical crew on their ground unit and transport the patient in that manner if we're unable to fly due to weather limitations. So that just kind of lets you know where we're at and what we're doing there. Okay, so here's a map you'll relate to even better. This is your corner of the world and shows you the flight times from your two closest bases, which are Port Angeles and Coupeville. So there are some circles there, concentric time circles. They represent 10 minutes out for every circle that you see. And so you can kind of determine how long it takes to get from one area to another, or to take you, more importantly, from Port Angeles to the larger medical centers throughout the Sound. Okay. Okay, I won't go into great detail on this. I just pretty much like this picture. So it just kind of talks about what we place on our aircraft. We have, at one time, our line consisted of primarily Augusta Westlands, an Italian helicopter known for speed and beauty, just like most Italians, right, everybody? And we've since added some different aircraft to our lineup, and I'll let Andrew touch on that when he speaks, but we have 4 new aircraft that are pretty outstanding. Some of you may have seen a press release that went out recently regarding that. In particular, we put the same package on every aircraft. So with the Augusta Westland, I could have told you exactly what they cost, because people often want to know, well, you know, what goes into the cost of a flight? And then when they learn more about that, well, how do you afford to do that? And so they want to know the details of how this works. So with the Augusta Westland, I could tell you that every helicopter was about $4 million, and then we would put on an additional $2 million intelligence package. Now we have kind of a varied lineup, and I'm not up to speed with all the prices, but that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. I also at one time was able to keep up with every single aircraft we had and how many we had. And I'm thinking that we're standing at a little over 35 helicopters right now, in an effort to have backup aircraft for at least half of our bases. So the main thing is that when you see our aircraft, they're that blue and red, and sometimes you might be able to see people on there. I was on the phone actually yesterday with a lady in a really small town in Eastern Washington, and she said, oh, my grandkids and I were standing out in the driveway, and she said, and we were waving up at the helicopter, and you don't even expect them to turn and look at you. And she goes, and the girl in the back turned and she gave a big wave, and it was just so exciting for my grandkids. And you will see them do that quite a bit, actually. Okay, so moving along here, I'll talk about the team. So who is on that aircraft? Obviously, we have a pilot up there, and this is a pilot that's trained in emergency medical flight, not applying any form of medicine to patient treatment. They're only responsible for the aircraft, but they are skilled in those types of flights. They also have to have a minimum of 3,000 hours of flight time. For that reason, the majority of our pilots are current or former military in order to acquire those kind of hours. We fly with a critical care nurse and a flight paramedic. Both of them require a number of certifications, and I won't go into all of those, but the reason being is, when I describe our aircraft to people, I say, don't imagine it as an ambulance in the air, but rather as an ICU in the air, with the ability to perform the invasive practices of chest tube intubation, needle surgical crike, administer medications, and we also fly with blood. We fly with 2 units of blood, and some programs don't fly with any, and some fly with 1. There might be some out there that fly with 2. We have found that it's necessary, and we think that it's a good investment for us to do. And I mentioned that press release a moment ago regarding a few new aircraft. Part of that press release was also the announcement of us carrying plasma product now too as well, which is a huge step forward in the air medical industry. So that was a pretty big deal for us. The nurse, I should add, has to have a minimum of 5 years in a combination of the ICU or ED full-time, and the paramedic must have 5 years also full-time in the field. And okay, so operations. What do we do? Where are we when you are at home in bed? These types of things. Well, we operate 24/7 at all of our bases. That means we have an aircraft there all the time and a flight crew there all the time. The base is set up much like a home, and it acts as a home too. I mean, Thanksgivings happen there, and Christmases, and all sorts of things. There's a barbecue at every base I've ever seen. I would imagine that I haven't actually, thanks to the pandemic, I have not been to the Port Angeles base yet, but I'd imagine there's a barbecue there too. And there's bedrooms, living room, kitchen, the whole 9 yards. And then in one room, there's all the serious stuff, including the blood fridge and things of that nature. And when they're activated, the expectation is that from the point of activation, which is sort of a beeping noise that happens throughout the base, and it comes through the phones, that it will take no more than, I think the expectation is it'll take no more than 8 minutes to lift off, but what the average is 7 minutes. And everyone has their role. The blood is grabbed out of the blood fridge. The medications are grabbed. Anything that needs to be loaded up, the pilot's already out there. There's no such thing as fueling up when it's time to go, because that's already taken place following the last flight. And they're gone. They're gone just as quickly as the beep goes off. It's pretty amazing. We have the ability to hot load a patient when it's necessary. That basically means that the aircraft continues to run and the blades stay at full throttle, which is the safest. You wouldn't want them to be at half throttle, because then they begin to lower. But and you can load patients in that manner with the appropriate training. And I'll touch on safety a little bit more in just a moment, but I will say that regulations guide when we can accept a flight request, and our crews are very versed in understanding, particularly the pilot more than anyone. That's their job, is to understand when they can and cannot take a flight. And the pilot's office is always on the corner of a life flight base building and is full of windows and has multiple screens, and they are constantly watching the skies and the weather and they understand what's coming in. At any moment, if you walked into their office and said, "Are we able to fly right now?" they'd be able to tell you yes or no, because they already know what's happening. We definitely don't push the limits when it comes to weather, because if weather looks questionable, it can quickly turn on a dime. So we don't want that to be an unsafe situation. Transports, we do two different types of those. There's an interfacility and there's a scene call. An interfacility is taking a patient from one hospital to another. Generally speaking, that's a smaller hospital to a larger hospital. And in the case of that interfacility, that sending facility doctor determines where the patient will be transported. And then the charge nurse, floor nurse, unit coordinator, whomever makes that call or presses this cool functional thing that we have in many emergency departments throughout the Northwest called the Life Flight Easy button. And it's really just about like it sounds. You flip up the plastic shield and activate Life Flight. So that's in the case of an interfacility, and some paperwork goes from the sending hospital with the patient, and the arrangement is already taken care of with that receiving hospital. There's many things that they determine, and one of those, for example, is bed space. And believe it or not, that's a thing, is there bed space, and do we need to wait on bed space? So scene call. So that's coming to someone's home, the scene of an accident, a very remote location. It can be very geographical in nature. I mean, for example, over in Montana, we go out to a lot of remote locations and rendezvous with EMS for people who have been thrown off their horse on a trail ride. There are a ton of those in Montana and quite a few in Idaho. Whereas you get over to the coastal regions and you start to deal with more water incidents and things like that. So in any case, we couldn't do what we do without the local emergency services teams. They're there, they're the first on the ground or on the radio, sending out the information that's necessary and getting things going and getting it arranged. In order for us to be activated to a scene call, EMS has to make that call. They have to pull the trigger, so to speak. So that can be fire, ambulance, also law enforcement, and a few other agencies such as search and rescue, fish and game, Forest Service, Department of Lands, groups like that. They've all worked with us on landing zone training and received that training and know how to orient themselves around the helicopter. Okay. So I'm not going to go into that one. That's just the quality and safety, and it's just some designation or some levels that we have and things like that. I won't bore you. It's Friday. Let's keep it light, people. Okay. Community education. So this is kind of a fun side. This is a large part of what I do. Not that flying isn't fun, because it is. We do education and training out in communities with whatever agency needs it, any of those that I just named, and it's all free to them. And many agencies need these trainings. They need to keep up their different things, continuing education units, whatever it is. And we offer those. Sometimes we host them at our base. We'll do something called Late Night with Life Flight. And other times we come to their location. We sometimes host, we throw out some pizza, and we'll do 12 lead EKG training. We help hospitals with training on their new ventilator systems. You name it. There's quite a range of what we do. And the areas: EMS, trauma, neurology, cardiac, pediatrics, critical health, and rural health, pretty much the full gamut. Additionally, we do community outreach too. So I guess there's a lot to that, but I would just kind of simplify it by saying we try to partner with our partners. Simply said, the hospitals, EMS, when they're doing fundraisers or different campaigns, because so many of them are nonprofit and they rely on donor dollars, and they'll be doing a different campaign to say, gosh, I just got an ask yesterday for an emergency department that is being remodeled. And, you know, we try to get on board with those as much as we can and help out to advance those things. They'll be bringing say a mammography, 3D mammography unit online, and they'll do a campaign for that. And we try to help and get in there and do what we can. And sometimes that comes in the form of, you know, donating a membership for raffle, or just a smaller one, or donating a lifetime membership. And I'll talk about membership in just a second. And other times it comes in the form of sponsorship, and it runs the full gamut, really. So billing. So talking about being flown, as you would imagine, it's not an inexpensive endeavor. We are a nonprofit, so we're a little lower in cost on the spectrum, but nonetheless, it is still expensive. Present day, our average flight cost is approximately $35,000. You probably wouldn't pay less than about 18 or 9, I'd say 19,000 for a flight. That's sort of the bottom of the barrel. We have worked very hard to go into contract with multiple insurance companies. So what that means is you have an agreement between us, the provider, and them, the insurer, for us to accept payment by them of a certain amount. And I have those listed there on the screen. There's quite a few, and we have a lot of people that make payments too on their flights. So there's a multitude of programs, but nonetheless, it is expensive. Which brings me to membership. So we do have a membership program. Many of you may be familiar with it. It's pretty straightforward. We do not require that you have an insurance policy in place to have a membership. That's something our CEO feels very passionate about, and he said he hopes to be able to continue for at least his lifetime with Life Flight Network. But for a membership covers a family. It covers yourself, your spouse or domestic partner, anyone claimed on your taxes, and any senior or disabled family who live at the same address. It's reasonably priced. It's $69 a year, and it just goes up from there. And then we do set up groups, and we do have many Rotary groups, actually. And you know, I should add, I didn't want to chime in at the very beginning, but I meant to say this when I introduced myself, that I am a Rotarian over here in Orofino, by the way. So when you asked if there were Rotarians, I was over here waving my fingers, sort of. But I just wasn't on the screen. And our Rotary group has a group set up with Life Flight. You do get a small discount. I think the larger benefit is that you have somebody that comes to you each year in your group and says, okay, who wants to renew your Life Flight membership? Check the box here and turn in your check to me. And then they send it all in, and your membership is renewed each year. So moving on. Reciprocity. There is some reciprocity that we have on membership. Basically, that means these are programs that honor ours and we honor theirs. There's a list there to the left, and then the visual in the center there, which I always prefer. And it just kind of gives you the overview of some other areas where you're covered with having that membership. And I can provide any of these materials afterward too. And pretty straightforward. That's some of our membership staff. There are, I haven't done a head count in the membership department, but I believe there are 9 employees in membership now. So that's just 3 of them. And that just kind of provides the information for how to access membership there. So, and that's the end. I'm done. I was shooting for 25 minutes. I went over.
I think you did great. I know there'll be other questions. My question is, how is the competition with Northwest Airlift beneficial for our community?
So Airlift Northwest?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, well, I mean, in a broad sense of corporate behavior, I think competition is always healthy for anyone. So in that sense, yes, absolutely. In the other sense, historically, we have reciprocated with Airlift Northwest on membership for years. We have. And unfortunately, they ceased that reciprocity at the end of 2020. So as a measure of communication, we sent a letter to our members letting them know, so they were aware, so they didn't think that if they were to be picked up by Airlift Northwest and they had a Life Flight Network membership, that, and I'll refer to them moving forward as ALNW, that, or Airlift, that Airlift would honor that membership, because they no longer will. So that does create a bit of a hurdle as far as communicating that information out and just making people aware, because it's for so long, it's just been reciprocity between us. So we want to be sure that everybody knows that. They function much like us. They fly with the same clinical team. Membership functions much the same as ours. We're very, very similar programs. There might be some clinical standards that are different that I'm unaware of. Andrew may be aware of some that I'm unable to speak to. As far as membership goes, the only differences I am aware of is that they require that you have an insurance policy that meets a certain minimum coverage for air ambulance transport. And their membership does not cover senior and disabled family who live at the same address. But otherwise, the membership functions much the same. So I think that as long as we're very clear with the public and we do everything we can to also help them understand that you can always request a specific flight program. That is your right as a patient. Now, it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed that program to pick you up, but what it does mean is that that program is first call. And so with there being two bases there in the Sound, those two bases would be first call. So let's say the Port Angeles helicopter was already out, then Coopville would be secondary. Fortunately, we have the fixed wing there in Port Angeles as well. And that mediates much of the issues with weather too. So we feel prepared, but we want to be sure that members of the community are prepared as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then if you, Andrew, I was thinking maybe you could, if you want to tell them about the new airframe out there, and anything else maybe specific, and then generally the questions that'll come up, maybe, yeah, if you could share the new Bell information, that would be awesome. And then from there, if you guys want to open up to questions, that will bring forward anything else.
Yeah, hey, thanks for really well done. And I think what just segueing with that then with our aircraft as well. So we do have what's called a Pilatus PC-12, which is our fixed wing aircraft. And that is really useful, especially at this time of year where even if it's IFR conditions, it goes below the minimums for our pilots to fly, no matter who the helicopter service is, especially due to freezing levels. None of the helicopters can go into those freezing levels. They fall out of the sky, and that's not a good thing. So the airplane's been an invaluable asset. We've had a really good partnership right now with Port Angeles Fire Department, where they will, and with Olympic Medical Center too, had a really good partnership with them, where we'll pick sometimes a patient up and we'll have them ambulance. They'll use their ambulance to get us over here to the airport, and from there we can fly it to Seattle or wherever is necessary.
Hey, is it just me? I can barely hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me see if I can get my.
It might be me.
How does that sound for everyone? I'll turn up my volume here. My apologies.
I can hear you.
Okay. Hey,
Yeah,
I was
I
going to
don't
say
have any problem.
really nice to be here because there's a lot of familiar faces that I see, not necessarily by names, but I know Jennifer from working at OMC, and Kathy, I've seen you around town before too as well. But hey, going back to the aircraft, so the Augusta 109 that we are using right now, it is a great aircraft. It's just like she said, it's like the Italians, but it's getting to be an older airframe. And what we're moving to now is what's a Bell 429 state-of-the-art aircraft. And it's a great aircraft. We're in process right now of transitioning over to that. And that should be up and running here shortly. I don't want to give any specific dates because there's FAA certificates and such that takes process. So those are all things that we're waiting on as well. Otherwise, too, as far as the bases go, it's worked out really well to have that Coupeville base for us here in Port Angeles because oftentimes we'll be on a flight and they can be there to assist us. So if there's another call, say out of Olympic Medical Center, they're able to back us up and get a patient out of there quick and timely manner because that's what you need, right? That's why you're using our aircraft while you're using Life Flight is to get you from point A to point B in a quick, timely manner with the medical needs that you have as well. So that's how so far it's worked out really advantageous in that manner. And Amber was correct also as far as it goes is our comm center. They will utilize the closest aircraft, whether it be us or Life Flight. And I think that's a really good thing because once again, that's what that patient needs. Now, you can patient request, you can ask for us, say if you have a membership as well. So that's something to look at as well. And then on oftentimes, where are you going to go? You're going to go to Seattle. We bring patients oftentimes to Providence, Everett, and Tacoma is sometimes, not as often. And what other questions do you guys have specifically for our base here? And you're more than welcome, by the way, to come out here to Fairchild, to the airport here and visit us and see what our facilities is like. Obviously COVID's kind of put a damper on some of those things for us. So we have to keep our distancing as well. And that was the other thing too, for a lot of the educational outreaches and stuff the last year, we've been limited as well with the community and doing that, unfortunately, because of COVID.
Any other questions or anything for Andrew or Amber?
I have a quick question, and I don't know if Amber will have the answer, but do you know if the membership fees can be paid with an FSA account?
Oh, that is the question that that is the question of the day. So the official answer is no, because it's technically a membership program rather than a medically related product. However, from what I understand, there are people who have made it through and been able to do it. So my advice on that end is go ahead and give her a try.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you talk about the average flight time?
Boy, that's a tough one. Maybe we should just talk about the average flight time around your area, and that would be an Andrew question, simply because we have bases clear over into central Montana, and some of those flights actually, depending on how far north they are, if it's a level 1 trauma, then they come clear over to Harborview. If it's more to the south in Montana, they go down to Salt Lake City. So you have some really long flights in there. Granted, those are fixed wing too. So then that also changes the numbers a little bit, but maybe there's something that Andrew would like to share specifically from your area, maybe from PA to Harborview and Virginia Mason and some of the different providers around there, Andrew?
Yeah, hey, sure. And Roy and all of you. So we're looking at usually from Port Angeles to Seattle, approximately a 25-minute flight time in our rotary wing in our helicopter. Obviously, if we're utilizing the fixed wing aircraft, then we're having to do ground legs on the ambulance. And then you can probably add another 10 minutes on each end of the flight for that, because where we'll have to usually land is at Boeing Field. And that takes us 10 minutes approximately from Boeing Field to Harborview or Swedish, one of the other outlying places. So usually we can get you there in an hour or less than, which obviously is quite a bit quicker than going by ground.
Right.
So that's our flight times. And then obviously if we're getting you out at Nia Bay or somewhere like that, you're going to add on another 10 minutes approximately. So that's what we're looking at, average flight time from our neck of the woods here. And then the other thing that's obviously with the membership really good to know is if, say, you're traveling to Oregon or Idaho or somewhere like that during the summertime and you happen to get sick or whatnot, you know, we got you back as far as it goes on the transport, whether you're going to Harborview or Spokane. So does that answer your question, Roy?
Yeah, it does. Good. Thank you.
So I've got a question. You mentioned that the doctor makes the call as to, or in some cases out in the field, the state patrol or whoever makes a call as to whether or not you need a night flight or life flight. If you're a member and you're told, hey, we need to transport you to Swedish, but nobody thinks it's a particular has to be there in a half an hour, and you're going to have to take the 3-hour, 4-hour ambulance ride over. Does your membership allow you to hitch a ride, or is it strictly high level trauma?
That's a really good question. Yeah. So your membership covers it so long as it is emergent and medically necessary. But don't confuse that with life-threatening. Those are two different parallels there that are not one and the same. So I'll try to help with an example. You're in a very remote location and you dislocate your arm. You're not going to die from it, but that can present vascular compromise and possible permanent use of your arm. And for that reason, it's an emergency. So membership covers it. And we have flown several of those out of the back country. However, if you are at Cadillac Medical Center in the Tri-Cities and you're insisting that your heartburn is the worst kind of heart attack, and you have to be to Harborview immediately to see the best cardiologist in the country, likely if it's something like that and it's not necessary to take you there because your illness or injury can be treated at Cadillac Medical Center in the Tri-Cities, then it would not be covered. And kind of tailing on to that, something I had stumbled across when I first came on board, nobody told me this, and I guess because it's not very important really, or it's not critical, let's put it that way, is that you can schedule a flight with us. You can go right on our website up at the top and click schedule a flight, interestingly. And a lot of people do that. And well, maybe not a lot, but more than I could ever afford to think about, because a lot of these people are coming from Mount Sinai and Mayo and these different areas. We're talking Minnesota, Virginia, Los Angeles. And I don't even want to know what the cost of those flights are. But that being said, it must be emergent and medically necessary. So in that case where you're at the hospital, the doctor has to determine that air medical flight is necessary for two reasons. You need to get there A, rapidly, and B, with a critical care team. So back to that, imagining the helicopter as an ICU rather than an ambulance. And then in a scene call, and I should have added, EMS doesn't have to come and see you to see, okay, his arm is over on that side of the highway and he's over here. I mean, for a very dramatic image here. If he's getting a report of specifically that over the radio, he can say, go ahead and send life flight and we're coming. And so you have us by air, them by ground. and we can come at the same time. They don't have to actually come see your condition to determine if it's necessary. Sometimes they can determine that immediately based on the call. They just have to actually say, yes, send life flight. So they're kind of the manager of that, if you will. Does that help?
And can I add on that real quick too, Amber? Oftentimes what will have happen is that EMS agency out in the field, when they first get to a scene, they may see a patient and go, gosh, we're going to need life flight. They'll activate us. We'll be up in the air flying to try to get to you quickly. And then once the EMS agency's had a better minute or two to evaluate you, they'll call us off, and we don't mind doing that at all. In fact, we'd prefer that. And that's no charge to the patient or anyone involved. That's just something that we'll do as well. And just so we can get there quicker, but it's not going to be a charge for the agency or anyone involved if that was to occur as well.
Yeah, that's right, Andrew. Good point. And the same goes for if we're flying into a hospital. We can land. We've gone into hospitals and actually helped. This is someone stood up at my Rotary and talked about this and said, you know, they've come into our hospital. They've helped us work on a patient and left without transporting the patient for whatever reason. It wasn't necessary, whatever. And there's no charge to the facility or the EMS or the patient. There's only a charge if the patient is flown.
Any other questions? Well, this has been very informative. Amber, Andrew, I want to thank you very much for getting up this early and joining us on our membership, on our member club meeting. And your program is very good. I do have a friend, he's my old boss, Mike Aline, and his son is actually flying for life flight down in Portland, I believe.
Yeah, actually, I've worked with Mike Elaine quite a few times. He flies out of the Kelso base there. A great guy, good medic.
Yeah, his dad was my boss for a little while, so
cool.
it's
Yeah,
kind of cool. But
good guy. Small world.
yeah, got to meet him, and he's very excited when he got the job and everything. So he's very.
Hey, Kathy, if your son ever wants to come back to the area, he's more than welcome to try cutting off.
Yeah.
that is one thing that we do. We do fly with we usually try to fly with a nurse and a medic, and a lot of other programs fly with a nurse, 2 nurses. I think the advantage of us doing it with a medic is exactly for those scene calls that we go to, is that the medics are just, let's face it, better trained at doing those type of calls where it's a scene call out in the field, not to bash on us nurses, but that's what they're trained in. And so it usually makes it for a quicker extrication of the patient and for stabilization. So that's one of the things I really enjoy flying with the medics. And I think that's advantageous to us, but more so to our patients. Would be the only other thing I would add. One other thing I was going to say is that we do fly with 2 units of blood, and now we're starting to carry FFPs, plasma as well, which has been proven for traumas, blood loss to be more effective when we're given a unit of blood and then FFPs as well. So that's just one of the other fine points to let you guys know about as well. But hey, thanks a lot, you guys, for having us.
Thank you. Very good. Yeah.
Appreciate you guys being here. Okay, at this point, I'll go